There's a story they whisper in North London, one that drifts quietly like autumn wind across the old terraces of Highbury. It's not shouted with chants or immortalized in giant murals. No. This story moves gently, like the man it belongs, to Dennis Bergkamp. They called him the non-flying Dutchman, a nickname born not from mockery but mystery. In an age where every player would chase the world, Dennis refused to fly. He traveled by train, by car, sometimes by silence. But on the pitch, on the pitch he soared. He didn't need wings. His flight came in the form of a first touch that felt like poetry. He didn't sprint past defenders. He drifted by them like a shadow cast at just the right angle of light. In a world obsessed with pace and power, Bergkamp slowed time. One touch, one look, and entire defenses unraveled. His game was not war, it was ballet. It was chess. It was cinema. While others chased goals, Dennis chased moments. That touch against Newcastle, the pirouette against Argentina, the pass that split open reality, each a reminder, football could still be beautiful. But why does this matter now? Why? Tell his story again? Because in this world of viral clips and goal statistics, we forget the value of stillness, the courage it takes to wait, to read, to feel. And because somewhere in Barcelona, a boy named Lamine Yamal watches old clips. A boy with the weight of destiny on his shoulders. A boy whose first touch has begun to echo whispers of something familiar. This is not just the story of Dennis Bergkamp. This is the story of what football used to feel like, of a man who refused to be hurried, who turned fear into philosophy, who made silence louder than celebration. And maybe, just maybe, this is the story of how that spirit lives on. So sit back, breathe, forget the noise, and come walk with us into the quiet genius of Dennis Bergkamp. Before he made defenders spin in disbelief, before he brought poetry to the muddy pitches of England, Dennis Bergkamp was just a quiet boy in Amsterdam, a boy who learned the game not in stadiums, but in narrow alleyways where the walls were. His teammates and the silence taught him rhythm. Born the sixth and youngest child in a working-class family, Dennis wasn't like other boys. He didn't shout. He didn't demand the ball. He waited. He observed. And then, he created. His father, an electrician, named him after the Scottish striker Denis Law. But what Dennis Bergkamp would become was something else entirely. At Ajax, he was refined like a diamond under pressure. Surrounded by the legacy of Cruyff, total, football, and the Dutch obsession with space and geometry, Bergkamp didn't just learn tactics. He learned grace, precision, vision. By 17, he was scoring for the first team. By 22, he was Europe's brightest artist. But then came the move to Inter Milan, a dream on paper, a nightmare in reality. Italy, with its tight defenses and rigid systems, seemed allergic to his style. The press turned. The fans grew impatient. Dennis, once the pride of Amsterdam, became a ghost in San Siro. But this isn't a story of failure. It's a story of patience. Because then came a call. From London. More, precisely from Arsène Wenger. And what followed was the revival of a lost symphony. When Bergkamp arrived at Arsenal in 1995, English football was still drenched in beer and brute force. The Premier League was a battleground. Long balls, hard tackles, sweat, shouting. But Dennis didn't shout. He whispered with the ball. At first, some doubted. Too soft, they said. Too slow. But Wenger knew better. He saw what most didn't. That Dennis wasn't behind time. He was ahead of it. It started slowly. A flick here. A no-look pass there. And then, the magic began to breathe. Fans began to rise not when he scored, but when he touched the ball. That's when you knew something was about to happen. There's a moment, a story fans still tell. A young defender once said, "When Bergkamp has the ball, you don't chase. You pray." Because how do you mark someone who sees time in slow motion? At Highbury, he found not just a team, but a canvas. With players like Patrick Vieira and Thierry Henry, Dennis orchestrated attacks like a composer conducting strings. And Wenger, he gave Dennis the one thing Italy never did: freedom. It wasn't about goals. It was about movement, space, timing. When Dennis played, the ball didn't just move. It spoke. By the late 1990s, Arsenal was transformed, not just a club, but a philosophy. And Dennis was the silent prophet at its core. He didn't chase headlines. He didn't give dramatic interviews. He let the football speak, and it sang. Highbury became his gallery. Each match a new exhibit. But beneath the artistry, there was steel. Dennis was no fool. He trained relentlessly. Obsessed over details. Practiced his first touch for hours just to get the perfect weight, the perfect angle. What looked effortless on match day was the product of ruthless discipline. And yet, he never let the game harden him. That's what made him different. In a sport that often demands aggression, Dennis showed us that gentleness could be devastating. That silence could be strategy. He reminded us that not all leaders scream. Some simply lead with a glance, a pass, a pause. From Amsterdam's backstreets to the terraces of Highbury, Dennis Bergkamp didn't just rise. He floated, slowly, deliberately, beautifully, and in doing so, he didn't just change the game, he redefined how it could be played. They say the first touch tells you everything. It tells you if a player is calm or nervous, creative or predictable, a thinker or a reactor. In the chaos of modern football, that first contact between skin and leather is often the only silence. Before the storm, and no one in history, no one touched the ball like Dennis Bergkamp. To watch him control a ball falling from the sky was to witness gravity hesitate. He didn't trap it. He received it, as if the ball was always meant to arrive there exactly at that moment with exactly that weight. He made the impossible look planned, the spectacular feel inevitable. One moment stands above all. It's 1998, quarterfinals of the World Cup, Netherlands versus Argentina. The score is tied. The clock bleeds toward extra time. And then, Frank de Boer launches a pass from deep. High, long, wild. But to Dennis it was music. He doesn't just control the 60-yard pass. He caresses it mid-air with the outside of his foot, lets it fall like a feather, spins around the defender in one seamless motion, and finishes with the outside of his boot, as if flicking the ball into a dream. It wasn't just a goal. It was a painting in motion. Millions watched, millions gasped. But for Bergkamp, it was just a touch, because behind that moment was a secret. You see, he practiced it, over and over, not the goal, the touch, the angle, the feel, day after day after day. Long after teammates left training, Dennis stayed, quiet, alone, rehearsing the poetry. His technique wasn't a gift. It was devotion. He once said, "When the ball arrives, I have already made 3 decisions before it even gets to me." He didn't react. He anticipated. He composed. There was something almost spiritual in it. While other players attacked the ball, Dennis waited for it to breathe. He invited it into space. Let it settle. Then, without force, he turned that stillness into magic. Defenders hated it. Coaches feared it. Because how do you defend a ghost? One manager famously said, "You can prepare for strength, for speed, for tactics, but you can't prepare for someone who sees the future." And Dennis did. He saw space before it opened, saw passes before his teammates moved, saw moments before the world was ready. Even in the smallest touches, those subtle flicks, disguised turns, no-look passes, there was intention. Always intention. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was rushed. That's why his first touch became more than a skill. It became a philosophy. It stood in defiance of everything football was becoming: louder, faster, more brutal. In a sea of sprinting bodies and chaotic transitions, Dennis was a still point, the eye of the storm, a reminder that you didn't have to run to arrive first. You just had to understand time differently. And it wasn't just fans who noticed. Thierry, one of the Premier League's greatest ever, once said, "I learned to slow down because of Dennis. He showed me that calmness was power." Even today, clips of Bergkamp's touches float around the internet like relics from a forgotten era. Young players watch them in disbelief. How does he do it? But the truth is simple. He trusted stillness. He respected the ball, and he never tried to force beauty, because Dennis knew something that modern football often forgets. Magic isn't made. It's allowed, and to allow it, you must be quiet enough to hear it knock. They laughed at first. When the news broke that Dennis Bergkamp refused to fly, it sounded like a joke. A professional footballer afraid of airplanes. It didn't fit. It didn't make sense. But Dennis never asked the world to understand him. He only asked to play. The truth behind his fear is simple: human. In the early 90s, while on a flight with the Dutch national team, an engine failure mid-air left him shaken. For others, it passed. For Dennis, it rooted deep. It became not just fear, but conviction. So he made a choice. No more planes, and in a world that moves faster than it thinks, that choice made headlines. Critics called him selfish. Some questioned his commitment. Others laughed, saying, "How can he be world-class if he won't fly?" But Dennis never responded. He just drove to matches in Spain, in Italy, in Eastern Europe. While teammates napped in business class, Dennis sat silently in the backseat of a car or a train, reading, thinking, waiting, because to him, this wasn't weakness. It was principle. He once said, "I won't compromise who I am just to fit the system. If I have to arrive differently, I will. But I'll still arrive." And he did, over and over, not just on time, but on point. There's something strangely powerful about that. In an age where athletes are expected to be machines, flying without pause, playing without question, Dennis Bergkamp reminded us that vulnerability is not failure. That saying, no to the world, can sometimes be the bravest yes to yourself. And perhaps that's where the myth truly begins. Because behind the goals, the touch, the elegance, was a man who endured every tabloid headline, every manager's frustration, every logistical nightmare, just to stay true to himself. He didn't do it for drama. He did it because he believed football wasn't about how far you travel. It was about what you bring when you arrive. Ask his teammates and they'll tell you. Dennis never missed a moment that mattered. He just took the long road to get there. There's a story from 2000. Arsenal had an away match in Italy. The squad flew. Bergkamp left 2 days earlier. Alone, in a small car. He drove across borders, slept in roadside hotels, ate alone. He arrived the night before the game, played, assisted. Arsenal won. Then he drove back, not for glory, just because it was the only way he knew. And in doing so, he became something rare in modern sport, a man unbent by the system. He didn't tweet about his journey, didn't film it, didn't make a brand out of it. He just did it, quietly, consistently, and slowly. Something changed. The laughter stopped. Critics turned into admirers. The nickname once used in jest, the non-flying Dutchman, became a badge of honor, a symbol of stubborn beauty in a world of compromise. Because in truth, Dennis didn't need to fly. He made the ball fly for him. And the irony? While his feet stayed on the ground, his legacy soared. He taught us that greatness doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers through airport terminals it never enters, through long drives on lonely roads, through the quiet courage to say, "This is who I am, take it or leave it." And the world? It took it. With both hands. Because deep down, we crave that kind of authenticity. In sport, in life, in ourselves, and Dennis, without ever preaching, without ever asking, gave it to us. He wasn't just a footballer, he was a mirror. And what we saw was something rare. A man who never flew, yet taught us how to stay grounded while reaching greatness. Fanforum 1002. Legacies are strange things. They don't live in trophies, not really. Not in statues or chants or highlight reels. True legacies live quietly, in the small decisions others make because of you, in the ways your courage gives someone else permission, in how your silence echoes through time. Dennis Bergkamp never asked to be remembered, but he is. Not just by Arsenal fans, though they still whisper his name with reverence. Not just by opponents, though they still replay that turn, that flick, that pass, but by a generation of players who watched him and understood something deeper. That football could be more than speed, more than goals, more than stats on a screen. He showed us that grace was power, that stillness was movement, that a single perfect touch could speak louder than an entire match. Ask Thierry Henry. He'll tell you Dennis taught him how to think, not just run. Ask Mesut Özil. He'll say Dennis showed him how to see space, not just use it. Ask every number 10 who grew up in the shadow of Bergkamp's creativity. And they'll all tell you the same thing. Dennis gave them permission to be artists. In a world growing more mechanical, more robotic, Bergkamp was human. And that humanity, it left fingerprints. But maybe the most powerful echo of his legacy isn't in retired stars. Maybe it's in a boy still becoming. In Spain, his name is Lamine Yamal, a teenager, a phenom. A quiet storm building in the colors of Barcelona. Still only 16 and already the world watches. Every touch, every glance, every step. And there's something about him, something familiar. It's in the way he receives the ball, not with panic, but patience. The way he glances once and already knows 3 options. The way he makes defenders move before he even does. It's not just talent, it's timing, intuition. It's the Bergkamp DNA, reborn in a new body, and perhaps that's why it matters now, more than ever. Because football today moves fast. Too fast TikTok clips, matchday memes, highlight culture. We celebrate the loud, the explosive, the viral. But Lamine, he plays like he's not in a hurry, like he knows that true beauty still lives in the quiet. And while the media calls him the future and pundits shout about his potential Ballon d'Or, perhaps his greatest strength is what he doesn't chase. He lets the game come to him, just like Dennis did. He's not trying to be the next big thing. He's trying to be true, to the ball, to the moment, to the silence between passes, and that's legacy. Not imitation, but inspiration. Dennis Bergkamp didn't mold Yamal, but his story, his choices, his art, his way, planted something. Seed, and now it grows in a teenager's smile after a nutmeg, in his pause before a pass, in his refusal to rush when everyone screams, faster. That's the gift Dennis left behind. Not a blueprint, but a belief that there's still space for wonder, still room for poets, still a place in football for those who don't fly but rise anyway. And one day, maybe soon, when Yamal lifts that Ballon d'Or, if he does, it won't be just a victory for him. It'll be a whisper from the past, from a man who once turned down flights, from a man who made the ball sing, from a man who believed you don't need to fly to change the sky. When the boots are hung and the stadiums fall silent, what remains? Not the goals. They fade, not the trophies. They gather dust. What endures are the moments, the still ones, the soft ones, the ones where time seemed to pause and football felt less like a sport and more like a story being whispered to the soul. That was Dennis Bergkamp's gift. He didn't chase greatness. He made space for it. And in doing so, he reminded us all, players, fans, children kicking balls against lonely walls, that football can be beautiful if we let it. There's a reason people still watch his highlights with a lump in their throat. It's not nostalgia. It's longing. Longing for a game where intelligence was valued, where elegance mattered, where one perfect pass could change not just a match, but a life. Dennis gave us that game. And now, somewhere in Barcelona, a boy carries the torch. But this story doesn't end with Lamine Yamal. It's not about inheritance. It's about invitation. An invitation to every young player, every quiet dreamer, every kid who isn't the fastest or the strongest, to believe there is still room for grace, to believe you don't need to be loud to be heard, you don't need to fly to touch the sky. So the next time you see a match, watch not just the goals but the build-up, not just the sprint, but the stillness before it. Because in those moments, Dennis lives. And perhaps, if we listen closely, we might hear a new voice continuing the song, a new artist painting on grass, a new chapter waiting to be told. So stay with us. This journey isn't over. There's more to come. More whispers. More wonder. More proof that even in a world chasing noise, silence, played right, can still win the game. Next time, we'll follow the boy who could become the youngest Ballon d'Or winner in history, the boy who plays like a memory and a promise, the boy named Lamine Yamal. Don't miss what comes next.